Welcome to your next video lecture on the skeletal system. Now the skeleton is a hard framework, and in an adult body there's 206 bones, and the main role and function is to support and protect the muscles and the organs. Now the skeleton can be divided into two different parts. You have the axial skeleton, and this consists of the skull, the vertebral column, the ribs and the sternum. And then you have the appendicular skeleton, which is made up of your shoulder girdle, the pelvic girdle, the upper limbs and the lower limbs. Now the actual structure and function of the skeletal system is what we're going to be looking at next. So the skeleton is made up of bones, 206 in an adult's body, and these bones have 5 different types. Now you have a long bone, which is the body's levers, which allows movement. Short bones, which are strong and compact bones, and they're grouped in parts of the body where you have little movement. This could be in your ankle bones or your tarsals. Flat bones are protective bones with broad flat surfaces. Now this is designed like this for muscle attachment. Then you have irregular bones that do not fit into the categories I've already mentioned. And then you have sesamoid bones, and these bones are found within tendons, and the main one is actually the patella and the kneecap. Now the function of the skeletal system is that it supports the body, and the type of their arrangement gives your body its shape. Now the skeletal system allows and enables movement by working with the muscular system. It protects delicate body organs. It actually forms blood cells in red bone marrow. It forms joints, and it provides attachments for muscles to actually move the joints, and it provides a store of calcium salts. So now let's look at what bones are made of. Bones are living tissues made from special cells called osteoblasts and osteoclasts. The tissues varies considerably in density, and the closest to the surface of the bone, the more compact it actually needs to be. Many bones have a central cavity containing marrow, which is a tissue which is the source of most of the cells of the blood, and also is a site for the storage of fats. There are 2 types of bone tissue: compact, which to the naked eye this looks like a solid structure, but really it's made, if you looked at it more closely, it looks a bit like a honeycomb consistency. It is full of holes. Now these are called Havisham canals, and these passageways contain your blood vessels, lymph capillaries and nerves, which actually runs through the tissue. Your compact bone is found on the outside of most bone and in the shaft of long bones. Then you have cancellous. This type of bone looks like a sponge and is found at the end of long bones and in irregular fat and sesamoid bones. Bone marrow only exists in cancellous bones. All bones have types of tissues. The amount of each depends on the type of bone. Now your Havisham canals run lengthways through compact bone and contain your blood and lymph capillaries and nerves. The larger the canal, the less dense and compact the bone actually is. So now we're going to be looking in a bit more detail at what actually makes up the bones, and we're starting off by your joints. So joints are your body's hinges, and there are 3 types. So you have your freely movable, which is known as your synovial joints. They all contain hyaline cartilage, a joint capsule, synovial membrane and synovial fluid. Some may also have fat pads, which help to blend with the capsule. There are 5 main types. You have your ball and socket, which is your most movable of all joints. Your gliding, which is the bones where glide over each other and is the least movable of joint. Your hinge joint, which means your joint will move in one direction. Your saddle joint, which is the movement around 2 axes, and your pivot joint, which is movement around 1 axis. You have your slightly movable or cartilage joints. This joint actually is characterised by being slightly movable, and it moves by the compression of the cartilage. The pads of white fibrocartilage between the bones, and then you have your fixed or fibrous joints. There is no movement in these joints, and the fibrous tissue can be found at the ends of bones, for example in the sutures in the skulls. Now let's look at the vertebral column, and we're going to be looking at the skeleton in different sections. Now the vertebral column is also known as the spine. It's a central part of the skeleton, and it supports the head, and it encloses the spinal cord. It's made up of 33 vertebrae, which is irregular interlocking bones. Some of these are fused together, so there are only 26 individual bones, and there are 5 different types. You have cervical, which have 7 bones in the neck. Thoracic, which contains 12 bones, which carry the ribs in the centre of the body. Lumbar, which is 5 bones in the lower back. your sacral, which is 5 bones in the pelvis which are fused to form the sacrum, and then you have your coccygeal, which is your 4 bones below the sacrum forming the coccyx. If you were looking at the ribs then, you have 7 true ribs, you have your false ribs, and then you have your floating ribs. So now we're going to be looking at your shoulder girdle. The shoulder girdle consists of 2 scapula, which are your shoulder blades, 2 clavicles, which are your collarbones, and these 4 bones form an incomplete ring. The flat part at the top of the breastbone is the sternum, and that gives the name the shoulder girdle. Your appendicular skeleton consists of your shoulder girdle, the arm, the wrist, the hand, the fingers, the pelvic girdle, which is formed by 2 large innermost bones which meet in the front at the symphysis pubis. Now this actually works with the sacrum and the coccyx to form the pelvis which surrounds the pelvic cavity. The pelvis of the female is wider and shallower than the male, and each innermost bone is formed by the fusion of 3 parts. Going back to the appendicular skeleton then, you also have the leg, the ankle bone, and the foot and the toes. The limbs, you have the upper limb and the arm. Arms and legs have the same basic layout of bones. You have your carpals, your metacarpals and your phalanges in the arm and the hand. And in the lower limb and the leg and foot, you have your tarsals, your metatarsals and your phalanges. We are going to now be looking at postural deformities. The spine has 2 natural curves. You have an inward curve in the lower back, and you have a slight outward curve in the upper back, which is the thoracic area. You have different causes of postural deformities. You have your congenital deformity, which are present at birth, environmental, which is due to sitting or standing poor posture, and then you have a traumatic cause, which is down to accidents. So you have your 3 main postural deformities. You have your kyphosis, which is an exaggerated outward curve, scoliosis, which is a sideways curvature, and lordosis, which is an exaggerated curvature. In your work packs, you'll be having a look at the different types of fractures, and your activity will be looking at the diseases and disorders of the skeletal system.